Good guys, Yoku here. If you're not on stream, if you don't come out to the streams, you are missing out on a lot. I'm not gonna explain what we just had. Chat might be able to keep up with it. Who knows, right? Don't read the chat. But anyway, today we are going over Prydwen's tier list. Why? Because we finally have a little bit more information that I can make some discussion out of. Okay, I skipped the last tier list, which I think was Dylan. We kind of all expected it. We knew. I told you guys Dylan was gonna jump into tier 0. There was nothing stopping this girl from getting there, but Banyue is a really interesting case. So before we actually jump into the tier list, I want to take a brief moment to talk to you guys about Banyue, right? Now, y'all know me, Banyue, fighting game guy, the fighting game character. Yes, he is a fighting game character. If you don't agree with that, suck me off from the back. Banyue is my guy, all right? And I said in my head, I'm like, yo, Banyue is going to come out. He's going to be Harumasa 2.0. And I may actually talked about it in a video and like multiple times on stream, but I was right. Are you tired of losing? Are you tired of losing those 50-50s to bullshit? Well, don't worry, big dog. I got just the deal. Introducing Lootbar, a popular top-up website that offers you purchases up to 23% cheaper. Nani? Now you can score that cool Jafufu without missing a beat. Using Lootbar is actually pretty easy too. I mean, all we have to do is pick the pack we want, type in our game UID, make the purchase, and voila. But wait, there's more. Not only does Lootbar use the same in-game routing as Zenless, but they're even working around 7 days a week to provide their own trustworthy service. And because I'm me, just for you guys, I got Lootbar to double down. Right now, new users get a 10% off coupon just by clicking the link in my description down below. Now get out there and go pull that new character. Now, I'm not trying to go on the whole, like, I was right. I don't want to do that today, but I do want to talk about the fact that Banyue being basically Harumasa 2.0, some of you guys might be here post Harumasa. You don't even know who Harumasa is, right? You've never seen that character on the banner before in your life. What does that mean? Harumasa 2.0. When Harumasa originally came out, he was considered weak. A number of content creators, DE server and like live content creators, lead content creators, whatever, right? A number of players said that Harumasa was ass. He was weak. He wasn't worth it. Don't pull him. Don't even bother building him. And at the time, right, as an advocate for learn how to play the game properly, obviously me, right, as an advocate for this, I knew Harumasa wasn't bad. And so what ended up happening was a lot of people had to eat their words. Now, despite that fact, they actually didn't eat their words. And that doesn't mean that they weren't wrong, because they were. What it meant was they simply ignored it. They ignored it. And this turned into, why would I do that much work, i.e. learn how to play Harumasa for little to no reward, right? When I could just pick up X character here, like Yanagi was the comparison. Why would I learn how to play Harumasa when I can pick up Yanagi and then EX heal 3 times and then get the same amount of damage, which wasn't true at all. Again, at that time, right, Harumasa, the execution was rewarded. We were just, I was just, not we, you guys weren't here. I was just doing this. And Josh's stream earlier, myself, Josh, and R2 were actually talking about this, and we kind of all agreed on it, right? On release, Harumasa at that time, again, was arguably top 3 DPS, definitely top 5. And this is once again something that the majority of players back then just didn't want to accept, Prydwen included. And this is how you got the results of, I don't have the actual image, but at that time, Prydwen was what, putting Harumasa in like tier 2 or something like that. Like, it just wasn't worth the work, right? They were like, this character is so ridiculously hard to use, blah, 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 tier 2, okay? And so we're here where now we get to have a revisiting of Harumasa 2.0, aka Banyue, right? Right. I'm excited. You're excited, right? So let's just kind of jump into it. Let's dance. I love Emma Stone, bro. I really do. She's fantastic. Easily one of my movie crushes, bro. Amazing Spider-Man 2 came out and that was my girl. Now, outside of me talking about white women and loves for white women, okay? No, I did not pull for Banyue yet. We will be doing it after a couple of videos. We're gonna pull for Banyue because I want to turn on the game last. But we're here. We can immediately see tier 0, tier 0.5, tier 1, tier 0.5, and tier 2. Normally what I like to try and do is try and like only look at this, which would just be tier 0, but I kind of feel like that's not super possible. Plus I already showed it to you guys, but for the sake of my own mental clarity, right, for my visual, let's just go over tier 0. We have the change log, which, like I said, there might have been a couple things that I didn't see in the last tier list. Like I think maybe Jafufu dropped down at the top right here, just between tier 0 and tier 0.5. It doesn't look like there is anything noticeably different. And so what I want to pay attention to here, rather what I want to point out, my first thing that we got to give Prydwen a pat on the back. Finally, They listened. They understood the error of their ways, okay? The eyeball is no longer on Miyabi. The last time I looked at this tier list, they had an eyeball on Miyabi. I told you guys, like, yo, get that eyeball off Miyabi. She doesn't deserve it. Here's why. Still the best DPS in the game, right? Miyabi is still conquering things that she should not be able to defeat. Even against Defiler, the Thrall, Wandering Hunter, right? What is it? Yeah, Thrall is literally anti-anomaly. This motherfucker literally says, don't bring anomaly. And somehow we have Miyabi clears of 40K against, like, 40K and above, right? Against Thrall, pure Miyabi. Miyabi is a character. He's an attack character disguised as an anomaly character, right? So finally that eyeball is gone. Now I will state the same things that I always state all the time. Miyabi is in a tier of her own. There's so much evidence from the time of her release up to now that this should not be arguable. No other character in the game is quite literally defying the meta. I want to make that very clear, right, guys? No one else in the entire game is defying the meta. The developers have actively tried to counter Miyabi, and they still have not succeeded at doing it. She is in a tier of her own. If I'm making a tier list of my own, she is the only character in tier 0. No one else comes close to what she does as a DPS character. Now, because I understand that this is the gacha space, right? Yixuan, people are going to look at this as like a form of damage. They're not really looking at character kits in terms of like why this character is in whatever tier that it is, right? Like what has this character done, the performance, so on and so forth. Damage wise and just like relatability wise, right? Yixuan being in tier 0, I'm not really going to argue that anymore for the sake of just ease of explanation, right? In order for you guys to understand whatever we're talking about, I'm not even going to bother arguing with y'all about Yixuan being in tier 0 or not anymore. She's up there. If you want to put her in tier 0, you can. If you want to follow something a little bit more closely to how I operate, or rather how I would make a tier list, then Yixuan is the only tier 0.5 DPS. She's in a category of her own at the moment. But regardless of that fact, or even better, put Miyabi in a tier called God tier, put tier 0 as Yixuan, and then you make the rest of the list. That's totally fine too. You could do that as well. For the sake of right now, right, just readability. Prydwen's tier list, her being in tier 0, valid. Let's talk about why, just briefly, because it's very quick. Yixuan is neutral across the entire board. Every single matchup in the entire game, Yixuan is neutral against. There's not a single thing in the game that is, to my understanding, to my reference, my memory, there's not a single thing in the game that is ether resistant. And even if it was, Yixuan doesn't care. He has 100% defense shred thanks to being a rupture agent. All of her teams have a way to essentially body rock anything in the game. If you need more stuns, play double stunner, she works just fine. If you need more support, play hyper carry, she works just fine. If you want a more balanced team, play her, a stunner and a support character, she works just fine. If you want a dual DPS, play her, Lucia or Trigger or Dylin plus another DPS, and she works just fine, right? Play her with Miyabi and she works just fine. Yixuan quite literally can do practically anything she wants, get away with it, and you're still gonna be able to clear. So certain characters, right? Certain DPS allowing you to just do whatever you want, put them in this category, totally valid, understandable. She's up there, okay? Yixuan is almost, and I say almost, but like, to be fair, she might be the epitome, her and Miyabi right now, might be the epitome of a perfect DPS character currently in Zenless Zone Zero. They're able to do everything on their own flawlessly. Adding more variety or like more variables, teammates, buffs, chills, equipment, gear, weapons, allows them to change in a very minute detail or drastically and continue to do it very well. So that's fine. The rest of the characters here, I think, are pretty much the same. There are 3 placements that I want to talk about though, that I noticed. Number 1, Dylin being in tier 0, absolutely valid. And I feel like now at this point, again, separate the fucking list. We could just move stunners back into their own category. Why? Because of the same thing that I said before when it comes to, and I see that they dropped Jafufu down from tier 0. Now, remember what I said in one of my previous videos about the tier list? I said that Trigger is in tier 0.5, and we all know that Trigger is, relatively speaking, higher valued than Jafufu. And now at that time, Jafufu was in tier 0. And so we made the whole conclusion, if Dylin comes out, there's no arguing her not being in tier 0. If they put Dylin in tier 0, you have to move Jafufu down because they're just not on the same level at all. We can clearly see that decision was made here. Then I also went on to say that because of the placements, Trigger is higher than Jafufu. They're not in the same tier. So if you move Jafufu down, you either move Trigger up, which doesn't make sense because her and Dylin aren't in the same tier, which means your only logical option is to move Jafufu down. We see that did not happen. Just put stunners in their own category at this point. Would I still say Jafufu goes down? Probably, yeah. But if they were in their own category, then it wouldn't matter anymore, because now there's only 3 of them here and all of them serve their purpose insanely well. Currently, I would say that Lighter and Jafufu are closer to the same tier, and Trigger at this point is just above them. Let me go ahead and reference why I think that, just in case anybody didn't watch the previous video. I'll try and wrap this up and make it super quick as well. Trigger is in a league of her own when it comes to the other 2 stunners that we just talked about, simply because of the fact that, as I explained with like Miyabi and Yixuan, Trigger works across the entire board. A character that's only supposed to work in their niche, or rather designed for their niche, so in this case being Aftershock, being the queen of Aftershock teams as their stunner and also pseudo support and pseudo DPS now, thanks to stuff like Orphie and even changing up Trigger's build, the fact that she works off crit rate, so she just naturally has higher damage and attack than everybody else. Cool. Then you get into the fact that not only does she do that, but she also works with anomaly teams, which predominantly don't need a stunner, right? Like they don't care for one, but adding Trigger into these anomaly teams oftentimes provides better results. Trigger is just that cracked. Then you get into the fact that, oh, what about Rupture? Oh, well, you know, Trigger does need her engine, and you know, without her engine, Trigger's trash, and you know, old EO opinion from like 47 months ago, right? Cool. Trigger, no engine plus Rupture agent still like cracks the fuck out of the game. Like it's still insane. And she outperforms Jafufu. Again, I was talking to R2 and Josh about this a little bit earlier, right? Before I popped stream. The fact that Trigger, the character who was not created or in design for a Rupture agent, is outperforming Jafufu, the stunner, who was designed for Rupture agents in mind. Trigger being able to outperform her in her preferred teams says a lot. This character is above the other 2. She is the only character that deserves the stunner role in tier 0.5. And because we're still talking about supports and stunners being fused into a category, there's no way in hell I'm gonna tell you Sokaku is on the same value as Trigger, because that's just not true. Nicole is on the same value as Trigger, absolutely. But then I look into, is Sokaku on the same value as Jafufu and Lighter? No, separate the tiers. I understand it from like, because again, I've spoken with them whenever they first combined the tiers, and I was like, yo, that's not a good idea. A couple of them who were like in favor of what I said, and mind you, they had a whole discussion before I even saw the changes, right? That's how that works. They discuss things first and then we see the changes publicly. A couple of them were in agreement with what I said, like you should not combine the categories because it doesn't make sense. But the majority, the player base, is very much like, it sounds derogatory if I say it this way, but I promise you I don't mean it in a derogatory manner. It sounds like, or they are more hyper carry focused or like hyper carry brained than looking at everything as a whole, right? Like a team value. And so when you're looking at things from a hyper carry perspective, you're not going to look at things from like, what does a stunner provide that another support character does not? I'll give you guys a really good example of this, right? So if you're playing a team, and recently y'all have been seeing this issue with Thrall, right? Thrall is once again another boss that has completely dismantled how a number of casual or average players approach the game. EO, what do you mean by that? So a lot of players have been approaching or were approaching Thrall with a hyper carry team. What's the closest thing to a normal hyper carry team? That might be something like what, Nicole, Astra plus DPS character, whatever. Cool, right? And so what ends up happening in a situation like that is with 2 support characters, you're not able to get your stuns in time, right? Your stuns take way too long. You have to change your build for some of these things. Astra's providing no value at all outside of the attack bonus, of course. And then the quick assist, if you don't know how to optimize it, because now it's getting to a point where you have to optimize or hyper optimize Astra play in order to get the value out of her so that she does what she wants with the energy upkeep and management. There's a lot. Main point being is that you're bringing in certain factors to a fight like Thrall, and you're not able to fully take advantage of the mechanics that Thrall is trying to essentially give the player to help them clear easier. By bringing these teams with like hyper carry double support, you're putting yourself in a worse scenario. And so now you get into, well, why does that matter? It matters because if a support character is not providing you the value, or rather the necessary tools that you need to clear whatever the content is in the game currently, what is your other option? Like, what's the clear choice? Even when you look at Thrall and it says this boss is catered towards or suited for stun category agents, that is the game telling you stunners and supports are not the same fucking thing. Split the fucking categories. Like, the game is telling you they are not considered the same. They are not valued the same at all. They're not. Dylin is another example of that. Dylin is not a support character. That she gives you a bunch of buffs, hell yeah, but her whole thing, I'm going to mega fist the out of whatever's in front of me, and it's gonna get stunned in like 10 seconds. I'm gonna stun the crap out of this thing. Then I'm gonna give you some support buffs, and I'm gonna do damage. So now what? We're gonna combine sub DPS, support, and stunners all in one category, because at that point we have multiple stunners that are filling that role. Trigger and dial in being the obvious answers at this current point in time. Split the fucking categories. Rant done. All right. I know that might have been a little longer, guys. My bad. But now we can get into the meat and potatoes of why we're here. My boy Banyue is in tier 1. My boy is in tier 1. Eo, how do you feel? How do you feel? As the fighting game guy, how do you feel about the fighting game character being slapped in tier 1? This is blasphemy. He should be in tier 0. Chat, I want to get like, you know what? Let me take a sip of water first. Hold on. Chat, you guys want my honest answer? I'm indifferent. I feel indifferent. I'll explain why. There's a couple, it's so nuanced, okay? There's a few factors as to why, for the most part, we'll say first, I will agree Banyue being in tier 1 or with the expert tag, but let me clarify why. Because we're looking at Prydwen's tier list. This isn't a tier list based off like the top level performers. This isn't a tier list based off like who has master execution, right? Like if you had the perfect player, where would you place these characters? This is based off of Prydwen, who we know, do I got to go back and find the actual, did they update their criteria? I feel like they didn't, right? Here we, yeah. Right, the very first line in their criteria, all agents are assumed to be utilized in their full best 3-man team, played without input mistakes, using our standards for performance. Now, again, I'm always going to call this out. This is literally like a hypocritical statement or an infallacy, whatever the word is. You can't have played without mistakes and using our standards for performance, because that just doesn't exist. If you play a character without mistakes, that means you're playing them at the highest echelon possible. You were playing this character to the maximum of their degrees. You know everything, right? You are the expert at playing this character. So playing without mistakes or input mistakes, you can't have that. Then you have using our standards of performance. This is contradictory to the first statement, because now, like, what are your standards of performance? And in Prydwen's case, I've called it out before. Again, not a shot to them at all, but I've called it out before. It's impossible for them to have dedicated players that go over every single game to a very in-depth degree to give them that, right? They don't have a cracked out of their mind Zenless Zone Zero player or group of players who are getting what I would consider kills, right? If we're talking about playing without mistakes, you're playing the character to the highest degree, or without input mistakes to the highest degree, you're basically on a roll to get kills. You are in that upper echelon of the 55K to 65K ranged. I know for a fact they don't have that. I know they don't have a group of players that do that, because we don't even have a group of players who consistently get kills in the community. So it's just not possible. Then of course I go down the list and all these other games that they're, you know, working on and actively doing things like that. But regardless, going back to what we're talking about here, okay? Because of that, if I'm looking at this from Prydwen's criteria, from their perspective and what they're trying to get across, Banyue being in tier 1, what that represents, it represents that if you play this character like shit, if you have no idea what you're doing with this character at all, and you're just button mashing, you're just like whipping stuff out, then this character is tier 1. He will give you tier 1 levels of performance. If you decide that you don't want to learn anything, you only want to learn how to do ABC 1 2 3 EX skill, activate Visage state, hold EX skill, and then let Banyue spam his own combos, right? If you play him like that, tier 1, absolutely valid. And this is why I say part of me agrees with that, right? Because at an expert level, he bumps up a tier, he'll go into tier 0.5, and then he'll be able to be played at the category or power level, the performance level of characters like Alice, Evelyn, Sanbi, Seed, Nagi, and Yidhari, right? This is the part where I would disagree. I think at base level, Banyue is tier 0.5. However, I don't think at an expert level, he jumps up into tier 0 either. This character is not a tier 0 character. He's not doing, and again, right, let's compare. Banyue is not doing what Yixuan or Miyabi are doing on any scale, not just a damage scale. We're not looking at just damage, right, guys? We're looking at the overall character. He's not doing, he doesn't have the full, like, right, Yixuan, neutral across the entire board plus positive matchups across the entire board, right? He's not doing what she does. He doesn't have a neutral across the board matchup, and that's not his fault. That's the game's fault. There are fire resistant bosses in the game that appear very frequently. There are bosses that want you to play a little slower compared to what Banyue is going to be doing in the game. You know who doesn't care about that? Yixuan. Yixuan doesn't care about that at all. Same thing with Miyabi. Hey, here's 5 or 7 different bosses that are anti-Miyabi. They are supposed to be made to counter you. Miss Fox ma'am, we want you out of here. Miyabi said, nah, I'm gonna do my own thing. And she smokes it. She doesn't care. Banyue is not doing that. He has not been put through the test of times to even see that. We haven't seen it anywhere at all for him to be able to do that. And the only kills he has right now are against his favored matchups, which is perfectly fine for a DPS to have, right? Yidhari, for the most part, is the same way. Why I'm saying he's a tier 0.5 DPS, like with the expert tag included, is because if we're looking at this, and I'm literally gonna only point out one character, Evelyn. If we're talking about the damage performance, if we're talking about the power level performance, right? As a character on the teams, whatever the case may be, realistically, Banyue outperforms Evelyn. Like if you're bar for bar, right? Bar for bar, same matchups, same everything that Evelyn has in favor for her, all of her favorable matchups, Banyue shares the same favorable matchups. We can say that. Yeah, sure, we can say that. Because Banyue is getting kills, and I hate to bring up the kill factor, but now we're talking about why I don't disagree, so I'm bringing up like the whatever the case may be, right? Banyue is getting kills with room to spare, seconds left over, and a not fully optimized run. The current only recorded kill we have on YouTube from the English player base has mistakes. Lin openly admitted there's mistakes. He still has like 5 or 10 seconds left over before or after the kill finishes. Like he's got some time left over with mistakes. It's not fully optimized. And he straight up says it because Banyue is a character that he's for skill expression. How the player decides to play is up to them. And if you want to mash mountain shaker, tremble, mountain shaker, tremble, whatever, you're able to do that. And you're probably still going to get similar results because he can just do whatever combo string he wants to until he runs out on meter. And I said that when I was talking about the character and like learning it. Optimizing this character is not going to be like there's one specific optimized combo that does the maximum damage and this is the only combo that you should learn with this character. No, he's gonna have a ton of combo strings because, as I keep saying, he's literally the representation of a fighting game or action RPG style character, right? Let's take, if you're tired of hearing me talk about fighting games, let's take up the thing that everybody tries to bring up for comparison, Devil May Cry. If you play DMC 5, 3, or 4, any of these games, really, there is not one DMC combo that just does all the fucking damage and it's the only combo you do. That's not how anyone plays DMC. There are combos for certain bosses, there's combos for certain enemies, there's combos whether or not you launch the enemy, you're in the air on the ground, there's combos if an enemy gets pushed too far away, how do you get closer to them? That is what Banyue represents as a character. He is purely like skill expression or player expression, the character. So if we're talking about this from like, again, the higher player level, at an optimized level, Banyue is automatically above Evelyn, period. That's it. If you're optimizing this character, all of her favorable matchups are his favorable matchups. And anything that he really favors, the fact that he's rupture, so now he just 100% defense, gone. Bosses that aren't even rupture based, so they don't even have the defense increase, 100% defense shred, gone. Evelyn can't do that. She can't do that. Banyue has all of this stuff in favor for him just by based off his class as a rupture agent. He's doing comparable damage to her at a lesser than optimal playstyle, and at an optimal playstyle, he's outperforming her. His team is better than her team, right? If we're talking about remove the DPS for a second, let's compare Lighter and Astra to Dylan and Lucia. Dylan Lucia fucking smokes. There's no shot in hell we're ever gonna say, yeah, Lighter and Astra outperforms Dylan. Dylan and Lucia fucking smoke. They are insane. That combo alone is disgusting. And sure, right? You're saying give Evelyn Dylan. You can't, because currently the Evelyn, Lighter, and Astra team is still the best in slot team, if only by I think 5 or 3%, something like that. So we're giving them their best in slot team. Dylan is not Evelyn's best in slot team right now. You guys are more than welcome to disagree, but currently on record, that's just not true. And as much as I don't like math, mathematically, that's just not true. So here we are, right? And yeah, Dylan just straight up bodies Thrall. Like that's her boss. That's her boss. So if we're only looking at Thrall, then that's a little bit different, but we're looking at it across the board. It's still Evelyn, Lighter, and Astra as her best team. Now, this isn't to shade Evelyn, right? I want to make that clear now. Evelyn's still right outside of top 5, if not in top 5, right? Depending on like how you're arguing, whatever points may be. So it's not like that at all. It's simply stating that if you're talking about like the optimal level, Banyue is up there in tier 0.5. But with expert category, if you were to give him that, he's not jumping in a tier 0 either. So if I saw someone in the comment added it earlier, like maybe like a 0.25, you could, but then you get a little too confusing because now you start arguing like, oh, we could put Alice in 0.25. Let's put Sammy in 0.25. Like it's too much. It's too much. So it is what it is, right? I can assure you the difference between playing him in the event and in the actual end game is fucking crazy, especially taking into account the combos can be interrupted by chain attacks and a lot of other factors like time on field, etc. It's gonna be hard as I don't think people that just play 1 or 2 hours a day will be able to master him. I agree. And so now, right, this is going to swing us into that conversation or that topic that I brought up way earlier at the beginning of this video. Harumasa 2.0. I think Banyue is going to be worse. He's going to be worse because Harumasa is not as complicated as Banyue. I think this is going to get to a point where because players actively choose to not put in the work for Banyue, you're not going to see his full potential reach the masses. Banyue will age better than Harumasa, I agree, but it's only going to be because players like myself, R2, Nyx, Lynn, Josh, right, Soul. I don't know where the has anyone heard from Flossin? I gotta DM him. Point being is that, right, when like players put in work to make this character shine across the entire board, that's when you're gonna start seeing the result, and then you're gonna see more value for it. But will the average player base, like the majority of the player base, pick up Banyue and play him to that degree? Absolutely not. The average player base is going to play Banyue to the same level, if not worse, performance-wise, than Evelyn and Minato. This is why those conversations were even started for when during the private beta or whatever, where people were saying Minato outperforms Banyue, right? Like, or Evelyn outperforms Banyue. You're doing there's even tweets, all the memes. You're doing all this work, you're playing all the fighting game inputs, whatever, just for Evelyn to outperform Banyue anyway, right? It's never gonna end. That conversation is never gonna end, and it's okay. It's totally fine for us to admit this as a community. Banyue is not a character for everybody, just like Harumasa was not a character for everybody. And if you don't like how Banyue plays, I got a lot of comments right in my previous. Yo, guys, by the way, off topic. Thank y'all for the last video that I did with Banyue. You guys actually made that video. I thought it was gonna be a 2 out of 10, or not a 2 out of 10, a 10 out of 10, because it started out as a 10 out of 10, and I don't know what happened. You guys really loved it though. Y'all came out with so much support. So yeah, I'm gonna make more, but y'all turned that video from a 10 out of 10 to a 2 out of 10 in a day. That was crazy. All right, thank y'all so much. I'm bringing that up to say that a lot of the comments openly admitted they love Banyue. They love the way he looks, they love the way he plays, and they're so excited to see me excited about playing the character and other people play the character, right? But they admitted to themselves, I'm personally not gonna put in the work to learn how to play this character, which is why he's an easier skip for me, because as cool as I think he is, I just don't want to break my fingers. And that's totally valid. If more people did that, we could have so much more productive conversations when it comes to characters like this. Now that I'm done with that, thank you guys for coming in from the raid. What's going on YouTube? If y'all are like seeing that, it's a raid from Josh. Okay, that's the guy, and we're chilling. Hopefully you guys had a great stream. I know he was wrapping some stuff up. We're still in the middle of my stream, kind of early on, kind of not early on, but like 2 hours left, right? Hopefully y'all enjoy y'all stay. If you aren't in my Discord, join the Discord, right? Where we're chilling, we're doing things, working on some secret projects in there. If you guys want to be a part of that, that's how you do that. Other than that, we're chilling. Over here, Hooper, you asked me, why are we acting like we don't just need to click 2 buttons in different orders for Banyue? Like he's not that hard, bro. Still skipping for Void Hunter Baddie though. So it's not about acting like he's hard, right? Think about it this way. And I'm gonna give you, my stick is closer to me now, right? I'm gonna give you a really good example. Fight stick, all right? If I asked you, like, play Cammy, you know what I mean? Cammy from Street Fighter, or Ryu from Street Fighter. And the only thing I need you to do, input Hadouken and Shoryuken, right? When the enemy is far away from you, I need you to input Hadouken. And when you see them jump in the air, I need you to input Shoryuken. It's only 2 buttons, and you can use modern mode. You don't even have to do the actual like Shoryuken inputs, just modern mode, which means all you have to do is press a direction and a button. Now, if I explain that to you, which means now you need to figure out how to do whatever the inputs are, right? And then consistently do them. The inputs are easy as fuck. That's why modern mode exists. That's why Zenless is the way it is. It's not a 20 button game, or a 6 button game in this case, with, you know, light, medium, heavy, and light, medium, heavy kicks, right? Doing that in the middle of combat while you're playing the game, while you're paying attention to all of your meter, your resources, your management, what the enemy is doing, what your teammates are doing, who's on field, who's off field. If you have enough energy, it's, thank you, yo, T-bro, thank you. It's game sense. The difficulty does not come into play with the input. The difficulty comes into play with all of the game sense, and then you have to do those inputs, right? Because you can't fuck it up Otherwise, you start over. So in Banyue's case, let's go over this, right? Just in like an example real quick for you guys, okay? So in Banyue's case, if I'm playing Banyue and I know that I need to do light, 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 so, you know, 1, 2, 3 into special button, which is going to give me a different result, or light, 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 special button, right? So like 1, 1, 1, 1, 2 or 1, 1, 1, 2. Then I need to start inputting 2, 1, 2, which is going to be special, light, special, or 1, 1, 2, which is light, light, special, 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 light, right? All the combinations. I need to input these combinations at the perfect time, so a frame cancelable window, in order to not only maximize the damage, but maximize the effect of the move. At the same time, guess what's going on? The enemy's not just standing still like a practice dummy, right? I'm not in training room. The enemy's not moving. He's doing something. The enemy might be actively trying to attack me back. The enemies, right? Whoever else is on the field might be trying to come at me. There's so much more skill that goes into this, right? Game awareness, game sense. It's not about just pressing 1 and 2. Now, if I were asking you like, yo, just go in the training room and learn Banyue combos, but I could teach you fucking Banyue combos in like 2 hours tops. And it probably won't even take me that long, right? Teaching someone the combo, it doesn't really take you that long to teach you the combo. And if you ever look into like fighting games, or I'll bring up Rivals, anything, right? If you ever look into anything like learning something, or like someone teaching somebody something, like Jam Slam is a great example of what I'm talking about. Teaching them how to do the thing is never the issue. Getting them to do the thing in the heat of the moment and remembering how to do the thing, so the inputs, that is the issue. And the same thing is applied inside of Zenless Zone Zero as well. Do I think we'll get another character like Banyue? It's tough to say. It's tough to say, Claire, because we got Harumasa and the community was like, he was received negatively. People loved him as a character, but he was received negatively by the fact that players just didn't want to play him, right? It was difficult, too much work, whatever. Banyue, we already saw that. Even before Banyue released, we saw so many players were like, don't want to play him, whatever. Now, not only that, but he's also getting into a point where he is 12 days, right? 12 days of banner. So he actually got a week less. They're cucking him to give Yixuan more time. He's already being presented and treated unfairly. So it's tough to say whether or not we're going to get another character similar to Banyue, as much as I would love getting a character like Banyue and then them being received well. I don't think Banyue's banner is going to have a great sales performance either, even with the people that are going for the M6. I don't think he's going to have a great sales performance compared to everyone else, especially with Yixuan right around the corner. It's just hard. It's hard. And they do base stuff like that off of these things, right? Now, maybe what'll happen in the future is we'll get a lesser version of Banyue where they don't have as many combos or inputs. They might still get a motion input, right? Because I just found out Banyue did keep the half circle input. So they might still give us something like that, which would be super awesome, but they might lessen it. They might make it smaller now. You know what I mean? And I would be okay with that if they did that. If they did something like that, I'd be okay with that. Would I prefer getting another Banyue? Absolutely. I think characters like this need to be in the game. And I talked about that briefly. Maybe I'll talk about it like here at the end, but adding characters like Banyue into the game, in my opinion, I understand that players don't like the whole like, oh, you're forcing me to do whatever. My thing is, you don't have to play Banyue if you don't want to, but it is an option, and it allows players who do want to learn, who want to get into something, it allows them the freedom and ability to learn it, and they get rewarded by having a very powerful character in their account. Finishing all of this off with like tier 1, right? Through tier 2. I think with the introduction of Dylan, Ellen needs to be brought back up into tier 1. I don't think this character her performance is on par with everyone else. Now, mind you, I'd also say Piper needs to come down. I don't think Piper is on the same performance anymore as Jane. I think Jane is outperforming Piper. I think Piper is just the free-to-play option, which is fine. It's fine. Piper's still great. Piper is still great. But if we're talking about damage performance, if we're talking about performances in all of the end games, I don't think Piper is performing on the same levels as Jane. I don't think she's performing on the same levels as Yixuan with Dylan being introduced in the game, or Ellen. And even to be fair, Harumasa, but he has that extra tag for a reason. So it is what it is. You say Ellen don't need to go up. Shiro, you're just a hater, bro. We heard about you last night. We were in the Discord call. You was hating on Ellen all night. So you know what? It is what it is. It is what it is. But I'm a faithful believer in Qingyi. I'm a faithful believer in Qingyi, okay? No. You don't like Ellen, bro. It's cool. You don't like Ellen? You don't like it? No. It's cool. It's cool, bro. See, you're only saying she just sucks so she gets more buffs. I know the game plan, right? I normally would say that Qingyi belongs in tier 0.5, but with the introduction of Dylan, I don't think Qingyi is gonna, be brought up in a tier 0.5 anymore, because Dylan just kind of outperforms her in almost every single way. But Shingi and Dylan on the same team. That double stun, listen guys, that double stun combo, wild, okay? These two together, I think it's the strongest double stun combo in the game. The strongest double stun comp in the game might actually be Shingi and Dylan. What DPS though, doesn't matter. That's the craziest part. Doesn't fucking matter. You play whatever you want, bro. You play Hugo with Dylan and fucking Shingi, and it's probably gonna outperform. This shit is dumb. It's ridiculous the amount of work they're able to do together. But to be fair though, right? The problem is with Hugo in particular, you don't have the resources built up in time. That is an issue with Hugo, right? Or any double stun comp, right? Anything that stuns too fast and you don't get those resources for your ultimate, for your EX skill, your points, the decibels, whatever, that will create an issue. So that's something that you always want to be mindful of for sure. Other than that though, I think we're kind of chilling, right? The rest of the list kind of looks okay. I would still say move Pan down, but it is what it is. I'm not really going to harp on Pan too much. It's fine where he is. Bernice being in tier 1, it's okay. I think she's going to get bumped back up to tier 0.5 once she gets her buffs. If anything, she's probably going to get bumped up here. We'll see though. We'll see. I don't think Vivian's tier 0. If I'm comparing Vivian as a sub DPS to Orphie, a part of me really wants to say that Vivian is no longer tier 0 and that Orphie just outperforms her, but I'm not going to stand on that just yet. I do want to do a little bit more research on that. From the current research that I've done and the performance or like the games that I've played, Orphie just outperforms Vivian in this particular role to such a degree that Orphie is just straight up tier 0. Like I think Orphie is the epitome of what a tier 0 DPS or sub DPS looks like. The rest of this kind of doesn't matter. It's always the same, right? Nagi being a tier 0.5 sub DPS, agreed. Being a tier 0.5 DPS though, honestly, I thought about this before I even did this tier list. I thought about whether or not I would bring Nagi down. I think I would bring Nagi down, and I love Nagi. I remember the last time I brought that up, I was explained as to why Nagi was so strong and deserved the tier 0.5, which for the most part, I agree on all her strengths. But if we're talking about as a main DPS compared to everyone else in this category, I feel like she would get brought down to tier 1 performances, which is a little, it's tougher to say, right? Because like if I compare Nagi as a main DPS to Alice wins. If I compare Nagi to a main DPS like Sanbi wins. If I compare it to Evelyn, and we're talking about again like the optimal level of play, maybe they're neck and neck. But historically, and with the data that we have, Evelyn is outperforming main DPS Nagi right now, right? Especially at M0. Seed is a little different because I think Seed is like, low key, I think Seed is weak. I think if anybody would get brought down, Seed and Nagi both get dropped down to tier 1. Compared to the post buff Sanbi, Seed is weak. Throw Seed in sub DPS category, bro. Seed is not as strong as Sanbi right now. And then Yidhari, no debate. Yidhari, if I ordered this tier 0.5 tier list right now, I think Alice is at the top of tier 0.5. I think Yidhari is number 2, and then Sanbi and Yidhari are fighting neck and neck for who is the second spot for the category here. Then I think, as I said before, Banyue, I think Banyue would take that spot instead of Evelyn. But if we're talking about what I'm looking at in front of me right now, Evelyn would take that next spot, and then that would be the end of my tier 0.5 if we're going based off that. You sure I haven't played Sanbi in a bit, but C got better score every single time I tried. Post buff Sanbi is a monster. She's disgusting. This character is cracked. This character is arguably top 5 DPS, if not right outside of top 5. I would have to sit here and like really think about this before I made it. And Seed isn't weak. Seed is just weaker than post buff Sanbi. They're not on the same level anymore. But that doesn't, I'm not saying Seed is weak. I'm saying that she's just not as strong, which results in her not being in the same tier. Guys, I think that's gonna wrap up this tier list here. I'm already like an hour deep. I don't wanna harp on this too much longer. Hopefully y'all enjoyed it. I know a lot of you guys really are just here for the Banyue talk, which I'll try and timestamp, but that is what it is. And we'll end that off there. Red, you were mentioning that you're gonna send me the message again. Let me actually, with the, can I just click on your name? I can just click on your name and look at it. Let me see what you asked me earlier. Technical concepts that casuals will have to learn more aside from memorizing the specials and doing the combos will be especially how to play a team-based game and playing a hyper carry character that demands all your time on field and how to try to keep them on field without losing the value on the rest of your teammates, and also how to keep maintaining the combos and everything you want to do without interruption, and doing all of that in the most efficient manner, so that you can basically do all that you need to do in the stun window and max out how much damage you can do in a time window so short. Yes, I agree with that. I mean, like, that's kind of what we were getting at earlier, right? When we're talking about what makes Banyue a difficult character to learn, right? It's not his inputs, it's doing all of that within the fight, right? Within a 3-minute fight, it's learning all of that. So that kind of goes for there. But you know, it is what it is. Anyway, guys, I'm out of here. Thank y'all for enjoying today's video. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on the tier list, whether or not you disagree or agree, who you would swap around with what, or ultimately how you feel about Banyue. Are you going to pick them up or not? Shout outs to the sponsor that I put somewhere in the middle of this video, but I can't say my usual outro because it's inappropriate for YouTube. Like the video, comment, subscribe. Smell you later. I didn't know he had animation cancels for like the full theme.
Talking about?
No.
The whole point of it being you doing cancels. It was
but
animation.
I thought it was. Listen, I did not give Zenless this much credit. I thought it was a regular cancel, like push the button, continue the stream. But you're.